In the firehouse, every second counts. The best tool for the job? A well-rested firefighter. Dreamseat firehouse furniture, built for durability, designed for comfort, because your best tool is your team at their best.
Welcome to Mental Health Monthly with Dan DeGryse and Chris Muscle.
Welcome to another edition of Mental Health Monthly. My name is Dan DeGryse, and my co-host is Chris Muscle. Chris, how you doing?
Good. What's up, Dan? How's the weather?
Cold. Midwest cold.
No.
And it's below 50.
It's cold here. I think it's, let me look. I think it's 61.
62?
61.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hence why I'm wearing a knitted sweatshirt here.
Yeah. But
anyhow,
I feel like I have backup because our guest, who we're going to get to in a second, comes from my area.
He does. And let's get to him. So our special guest today is Chris Fields. Chris Fields, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you having me on. A lot of people don't like it. I look forward to doing these things. So I'm honored to be on.
Yeah. So we go back, 6 years, maybe 7?
Probably about 6. I've been retired almost 8. Yeah. Probably about 6 or 7 years. Yeah. Good call.
We did something for Firefighter Cancer Support Network with Curtis Dunn and a couple other people. That's where we met, and we got to do a tag team open air question and answer. And
yeah. And then I went to your event down in San Antonio. Was it San Antonio?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. The last one I did.
I'll tell you a quick story on that. The San Antonio.
Okay.
I went to Rhode Island about 8 or 9 months ago. I went out there and spoke to their EMS refreshers they were doing for that quarter. Were going to be on mental health and stuff for their taking care of their own. So I went out there and did a deal and went back 2 weeks later and caught the other half of the fire department. But the gentleman that contacted me heard me speak at your deal in San Antonio 4 or 5 years ago and remembered it, and it kept my contact information and wrote everything down and contacted me. But that's where he heard me speak the first time was at that event in San Antonio. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. To speak to that, man, you probably can't remember, no offense, but the number of speaking engagements you have had as a result of the incident we're going to kind of talk about, and then transition to the rest of your life.
Right.
Innumerable, right?
It is. And it was something I had never envisioned. Jay Dobbins, he's a former ATF agent that infiltrated the Hells Angels for 2 years. He was friends with Doug Mondo, Doug he was on our podcast together, Survive First.
Okay.
Anyway, he was going to speak at a deal in Arizona, and he told Jay about me. Jay said, "Hey, you want to come out and speak at this deal?" And that was my first time speaking. And it's and I thought, one-time deal, fly out there, be cool. And then, man, it just started steamrolling, and it's been going good. And I don't do as much. I don't like being gone, 24 days out of a month. So
I hear you. We definitely will get to that. So again, we appreciate Chris, you being here. For those of you that don't know Chris, and again, I say that because in the fire service, right? I was talking to Chris Muscle, my co-host, is that I'm the last year of the baby boomer, so 1964, and we got the millennials, and then generation. Was it Generation X or Z? X, Generation X. And I think the next one that's coming in that's probably just in the infancy of maybe, what do you call that stuff, where you go to, you're at school and you do the firefighting stuff and you're 15, 16, 17 years old.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to call it Explorer program, but I know what you're talking about.
No, I think that's it. And then the Generation Alpha, right? So Let me give you a little introduction and we'll get to the conversation. So, Chris Fields, right? You were a major at Oklahoma City.
Yes, sir.
And you spent, and I wrote this down because it's important and I want to ask you probably later about this, is you spent 31 years, 7 months, and 16 days. And I think in the article that I saw, you might even had it down to the hour.
Pretty close.
Okay. So for those that know Chris, both personally or professionally, it goes back and it's probably, how would I say, burnt in people's minds. And we're going to go back to that day, April 19th, 1995, when the federal building in Oklahoma City was bombed and 168 people died, 19 children. What's also important too is that, not only currently are you a father of two, you're a husband, but at the time, I think your oldest son was 2 years old at the time. And that's going to be important. Go ahead. Am I right with that?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
2 years old.
And your second child wasn't born yet?
No, he wasn't born until 99. So.
Okay. I always like to have my facts straight. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job doing this podcast. But, and Chris and I know each other. We've presented in front of people. We've had conversations. I've been on this podcast. I think it's important from a behavioral mental health, just awareness standpoint. We have to be human too. So, anybody that's listened to this podcast or anybody that knows me, we're going to make it light, but also it's going to be heavy. And it's important to make it light when it's heavy because we don't want to stay down there the whole time.
Right.
Right, Chris?
Exactly.
So the infamous picture, which I think we're going to have at some point on this podcast, it's not currently now, has you carrying a 1-year-old baby. I think it was the day before her 1 year birthday.
Yes, she turned 1 year old on April 18th. Yeah.
Bailey and last name Alman. They have you on the cover, probably on every magazine and that's ever been created. You carrying Bailey to an ambulance, and that, without a doubt, not only changed America, but that for you, right? You went to work as another day.
Yeah,
and that happened.
Yeah, and I know we'll get into it, but as the fire service goes, I went to work, normal day, and had my day off the next day, and went right back to work the next day. I mean, it was just what we do or what we did,
Right. So if you don't mind, and I don't want to do it injustice, but just in regards to our time on the show, and you've recalled these events, and I think everybody's has to know too, and me and you have talked, that you're okay recalling these events, but I'm assuming as you recall the events and as I ask you to kind of share the events, in a 5 minute period, you recall that stuff, like potentially that you were like it happened yesterday.
Oh yeah, it's as if it happened yesterday. We're coming upon this April will be the 30th anniversary of the bombing, right. And I can recall everything we did at the station that morning before, and everything we did that day, and y'all know there's a lot of calls that you can do that over your career, but definitely that day for sure. I can go through it step by step.
And I think it's important to know, right, as us as human beings, and Chris Muscle has been was in the military, spent, was it 4 years, Chris?
Yep. 4 years, Marine Corps infantry. Yep.
And now how many years in the fire service? 16. Yeah. So quite a long storied history, not as many as 31 years, 7 months, and 16 days.
42 seconds.
There are things that are burnt into our memory. That's how our nervous system works, favorably and unfavorably. And we also know too that as we talk about this is going to elicit a response in people because they're going to remember, or some of the younger ones, right, aren't going to remember, but they have read about the Oklahoma City bombing. Yeah. So we want to make that known, and if people have a visceral response, we get that. So take us back to that day and walk us through what went, what went through with you and the events that day.
Yeah, and like I said, it was, April 19th, 1995. I know it was a Wednesday, just because of what we were doing that morning at the fire station, our little duties for that day. It was yard day. So guys were out mowing and weed eating and doing stuff. I was one of 3 officers at the station. We had 3 rigs at the station, engine, ladder, and the hazard materials unit. And I was the officer on that hazard materials unit that day. And, just regular morning. And the next thing we know, my station was at that time was Fire Station 5. It was, 5th, 23rd, 17 blocks away, 18 blocks away, just north of the bombing. So we felt it. It rattled. If you read the history on it, it's felt up like to 50 miles away. People felt the shock and everything. So man, it rattled the station. The windows rattled. We thought a train, there was a railroad, some tracks next to the station. An old ice cream plant used to sit there, which was a great benefit when you're in the fire service and they let you come over in their freezer and take what you want. But we thought a train had derailed maybe. And
like your brain's trying to make sense of it. Yeah,
because it was just out of nowhere. And I can always remember the time. Even if they hadn't, I probably couldn't have pinpointed 9:02, but if somebody would have asked me what time, I could have said 9 a.m. because we were giving the new guy a hard time about not having breakfast ready yet. And we usually don't eat breakfast. We do 10 and 5, breakfast, brunch at 10, dinner at 5. And we told him, we said, hey, you're cooking today. And the station officer, he likes to eat at 9 o'clock promptly. We were just doing that because we knew it was 9 o'clock. And right then is when we felt it. And we went out, everybody, shocked look. We went outside to look to where we thought it was the train and nothing. We looked back south towards Oklahoma City downtown and saw this huge plume of black smoke. And we just self-dispatched ourselves. We didn't wait to be toned out or anything. We talk these serious stories, and I always like to throw in these little light facts to kind of keep it a little light. But when we got dispatched, one of our guys he was still weed eating, walking along, had his hearing protection on. His back was towards downtown, and he felt the rush, but he thought it was a sonic boom because there's an Air Force base 7 miles to the east of us. So he thought it was just jets and a sonic boom. He just kept on. We had to stop and hit the air horn. We had one guy that was on one of those Schwinn air bikes in the weight room, rock music cranked up, just going to town. He never knew. He came out when he got done working out and the place was empty. So he jumps in his little Honda car at the time and he's driving through sidewalks downtown he finally caught up with us. Yeah, but he never knew we even left till he came out from working out.
The story behind the story, right? Yeah, I appreciate that.
Crazy stuff. But we headed down there, and about 10 or 11 blocks away, from the site, I started seeing all these storefront windows kind of blown out, and people just kind of coming out of their buildings, out of their offices, days, looking just not injured, but just that look like, what in the hell just happened? And me and the guy that was driving me, we were discussing what it could be. We knew there was where the museum is now was the Water Resources Board building at that time, and they were doing a huge remodel job on it. We were thinking like a welder's torch, because they were doing some steel work, natural gas line, ruptured or something. Never thinking about a bomb being detonated. And I always tell people we get down there and the first thing we see is where we were parked. There was a little hill. We couldn't see the bottom of the Murrah building. That was the building that was bombed, the Murrah building. We couldn't see it. But you could see these people running over the hill like the from a horror movie, you know, and you see that little clip where people are running and
you're probably wondering, do I get closer? Do I
yeah, we spot
distance and shielding, right?
Well, I had him stop and spot because I didn't want to run over anybody because we spotted a well over block and a half away because there's people just like running right in front of us. So I said, we got to shut this thing down. And the first thing we did was when there was a YMCA caddy corner from the Murrah building, and the station officer John Cruz had set up a triage there because that had a daycare in it also. But all those injuries were like glass, flying debris, injuries. And we were kind of doing that. And then they asked for the hazardous materials unit command, asked for the hazardous materials unit to come down to the scene, or come to the actual scene, report to the command post. Really the first time, true, that the full ICS system it was very new back then, with all your branches and your divisions and all that kind of stuff. Very new. Communications, 1995 were horrid. There was no, 800 system or whatever. It was horrid communications between police and fire and all the other entities down there. And, mass confusion and chaos. And, so we went down there and we helped the police get this lady who was trapped in the basement. We got her out, and it was, so we're 30 minutes into the incident by now. And we got an assignment to go to the other side, to the south side of the building, report to somebody, division. And that's when Sergeant Avery, a police officer, handed me Bailey. And I tell people it was like, honestly, I couldn't tell you. He didn't come around a corner. I didn't see him come out of a walkway. It was just like, poof, and he appeared. He was in front of me holding this baby and said that, he had a critical infant. That's all he said. And I think there's actually a photo of me holding my hands out, him handing me Bailey. And first thing I did was check her for any, signs of life. And I couldn't get any, and I had to clear a bunch of concrete dust out of her throat, and she had an open skull fracture and some other injuries. And I did exactly what he did. I took her across the street to I saw an ambulance, saw paramedics over there, and walked over there to them and said the exact same words. I just told them, I said, hey, I've got a critical infant here. And the photo, if we want to get into that real quick, the actual photo. Yeah. Of course, and we can back up if you want me to get into it, but I didn't know about the photo or see it. I didn't know about it until 11 o'clock that night. There was a photo. No,
I was going to say, hold that for a second. Just go through the thing. And then, because it's interesting, because again, the first time I heard it, I'm thinking, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't find out about till 11 o'clock that night. Didn't see it till the next morning, but I walked over there and the ambulance was full. There was somebody on the floor, on the cot, and up on the bench seat, and there's people laying around backboards. And once I saw the photo, I knew exactly where I was standing. I was waiting because the paramedic said, let me get a blanket because we're not going to put that baby on the ground because there was nowhere else to put her. And I say, we'll go into all that. And then once he took her from me, I told him, get the basics. I checked her for any signs. I didn't find any, and told him what injuries I had assessed, and I was gone.
You're back to work. You did.
Yeah,
you worked for how long?
Crew. Yeah, I went and found my crew. When I caught up with them, they were walking around in a circle, kind of like, where do you feel us now? So they were talking to somebody. Somebody had sounded out, and they'd heard them. And this lady kept telling us, I can feel you standing on top of me. So they were trying to sound out how she was laying, so they could start digging and know where to be careful around her head. And I tell people this was it was a pretty significant thing because when we got her out, her name was, we dug her out, and her name was Sheila Driver, 28 years old, pregnant. 7 or 8 months pregnant, telling us I'm writing all this information down. I've got 2 kids at home. I've got this is my number, call so, and all of them telling you all their information. And because when you first see the building, and I'll back up real quick. The first time I saw that building, if you would have said 9:00 in the morning, downtown Oklahoma City, 9 floors pancaked on top of each other, third of the building gone, and I don't discount any fatality, but to tell me there's only going to be 168 fatalities, I would have said, you are absolutely insane. You know, I mean, you put so many people on each floor, I can come up with more than 168, you know.
Right.
So that was kind of our mindset, like, you know, this is not going to be a good day. And Sheila was alive and we talked to her. So it kind of gave us that, it kind of rejuvenated the guys to say, hey, you know what? There's one, there's probably more in here. And, you know, that's what we want to do.
You need that. How long were you into that event so far?
We're probably about an hour or so into it now. And
okay.
The crew, though, before I had got there, they had already removed 2 fatalities.
Okay.
And like I said, it was a day where, you know, not everything and everybody was intact. So it was just stuff, you know, that you see throughout your career, spaced out, but not all in one area, you know, to see it like that.
Right.
But so Sheila kind of rejuvenated everybody and it's like, hey, if there's one, there can be another, you know. And we worked the rest of that day. We got relieved to go back to the station at 11 o'clock that night. And the rest of that day, Sheila was the last live person that we had any contact with. Everything else was recovery or working with us. They had live scent dogs and cadaver dogs down there. So that's who we spent the rest of that day with. After about 10:45 or 11, they evacuated the building because they thought they'd found another explosive device. And that's when we found out that it was an explosive device to begin with, because they evacuated and said they thought they'd found another bomb. We were like,
okay,
another bomb? We didn't know there was a bomb to begin with.
A-bomb. Yeah, right.
And so it turned out to be nothing. It was a bomb, but it was an old decoy. The ATF was up on the 9th floor, and it was some of their stuff they had on display. Well, somebody came across it and said, we got a bomb right here, which they weren't wrong. It just wasn't a live bomb, you know. So once we got back in there, it was, I think that kind of gave us a chance to gather ourselves when we got evacuated. And there were firefighters and police officers that were forcefully removed because they were a good friend of mine, Alan Hill. He was actually reaching down between the rubble and talking to a lady and had hold of her hand. And they forcefully, you know, evacuated him, made him leave. And, but he was able to, you know, go back and make contact and all that. But the rest of the day was just was body recovery. You know, spray painting marks to where the dogs would pick up a scent and you might be able to see something. And that was for the other crews to come in. And that's where they would start shoring up the building and start digging and removing debris to even. And that's why it was so long and so much a day, because you couldn't just start throwing rocks and debris and moving people because of the structure. And so it was just, and even sitting here telling it now, I think, I can't believe I was, you know, that happened, you know, and to see that kind of stuff in person.
What time do you get back to do you get relieved? Do you get back to the firehouse, or do they relieve you in the morning and you go
No,
home?
we got back. They sent everybody back not everybody, they rotated crews. Which I'm going to talk about that real quick. Our fire chief did a great job on that because, you know, Oklahoma City is 620 square miles, you know, with all the rules. So we got 37 fire stations, and you get guys and gals out there working that want to be part of it because it's their city and their citizens. He did a great job of rotating crews in from 25 miles out, you know, to be part of it. And so that's what they did. They sent us back to the station, and then for the remainder of the next month, while they were still recovering, you would report on your duty day and do 12 hours. By that time, we called it the pile. You did 12 hours on the pile, and then you would do 12 hours at the station for your 24 hours. And but yeah, we got back to station at like around 11:30. That was the first chance we all got to kind of, you know, call our spouses and all that, and let them know that, hey, we're all good, everything's, you know. And that's when I found out that there was a photo taken.
No, we didn't have phones back then, right? So, or we did maybe. I'm trying to think, but not where you're going to get a picture. So you hear this.
I had a bag phone, I think, carried around in a black bag.
Oh, okay.
I got the photo too. I'll pull it up.
The what?
The photo. I'll pull it up.
Oh yeah, it's me and Bailey. And what I tell people too is that, and I'm glad that photo's there, because you can, if you see the photo like on Newsweek, they've blown it up. It takes up the whole cover, and it makes my helmet look like bright cherry red, and it makes you can see the concrete dust mixed into the blood on her head. But you look at the photo on the Newsweek cover blown up, it's got it like it's bright red. And I know that's just the media doing their thing, but
okay.
Yeah, but that's
the officer that handed.
No, right below me is that. See, the actual picture is big. They cropped it down. Yeah, it's even goes farther back. That's the IMSA paramedic. That's one that's in uniform, and the other guy, I'm pointing it like people can see me pointing. But the guy knelt down is a paramedic that was off duty, so he was just in street clothes, and he's looking up at me, and I'm telling him I got a critical infant, and that's where he's telling me that, I'm gonna get a blanket. And I remember, I can tell everybody, that's once I saw the photo the next day, say at 11 o'clock at night, I still didn't know this is what the photo was. But looking at it, I can tell you, man, I remember thinking, I knew she was close to my son's age. He was 2, she's 1. And I just kept thinking, somebody's world is getting ready to be, turned upside down today.
Yeah.
And not knowing at that time that thought, that emotion, that feeling was going to be felt by other responders 167 more times, around the building that over the next month. It was just still a surreal moment to think about. And but like I said, I got a call from a dispatcher of what happened when we got back to the station, and he said, "Hey, Chris, did you carry a baby out of the building?" And I said, "No, Harvey, I didn't." I said a police officer handed me a baby. And he said, I've got a picture. The Associated Press faxed me a picture, and evidently some banker or teller who was
and you're like, who?
Yeah.
Like the Associated Press. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm going, okay, this is out of my league. I was like, you need to talk to my station officer. You need to talk to the chief. But what had happened, I guess, an amateur photographer that was a teller felt the explosion, heard it. Of course, they were evacuated. He thought they were maybe demoing a building that nobody had, So he just grabbed his camera and just started snapping pictures, and took his roll of film to the photo mat. And depending on the age of the crowd I'm speaking to, sometimes I have to explain what a photo mat was and a roll of film,
And a roll of film, right?
Yeah. But anyway, the Associated Press ended up calling us. The manager of the photo mat called this guy and said, "Hey, you've got some photos here that you need to, call the Associated Press. They're good. They're going to want them." Anyway, so.
Oh, so the guy that's processing the film tells the amateur photographer, wow.
When he picked up when he came to pick up his stuff, he told him, he said, "You've got some photos in here and you need to contact the Associated Press." So he did. And, but anyway, on this phone call with the dispatcher, I told him, I said, "Harvey," he goes, "It's kind of grainy because it's been faxed to us." He said, "And I can't," he goes, "It's a red helmet with the 5. He goes, and Harvey's a big goose. He said, "I think I see your cheesy little porn stash from the side." That's what he was telling me, I don't think we're knowing the impact of this yet, so we're still kind of, and I said, "Harvey, let me ask, Captain Mayfield and Captain Cruz, they were the other 2 guys with red helmets at the station that had a 5 on them. And they said they didn't carry any baby." And I said, "Harvey, I guess it's me." I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, we got this photo, and fire chief said if we can tell who it is, we can identify him to the Associated Press." And I said, "Okay, I guess it's me then." And I said, "What's going on with the photo?" And he goes, "Well, the guy I'm on the phone with says that it's going worldwide tonight or in the morning." I'm like, "Okay, click, whatever."
Yeah.
the guys and girls said, "What was that about?" And I said, evidently I'm going worldwide, just kind of jokingly saying it, we went to bed. We made a house fire that night. We, got up the next morning, and that was the first time I saw it. The other shift was coming in, and one of the guys brought, it was like an inset picture on the front page of our paper, Dallas Morning News, USA Today. And we were watching the news shows, and they were showing all the, headlines around the world. And in every language, everything, there was that photo. And I remember thinking, that's when I knew exactly what I was doing, what I was thinking. But my first thought, still, I think about it today, my first thought was, they're running this picture. I wonder if the family even knows, that's their kid. And I know my mom and, of course, my wife, she's a mother. So they were all like, whoever the mother is, this before I met Aaron, whoever the mother, they know. Mothers just have this thing, they would have recognized her little socks or something. So that was my first concern was, I wonder if the family even knows, and here this thing's going worldwide. Met Aaron the very next day, Bailey's mother, the very next day. And she did know, she had found out actually late. She didn't know about the photo, but she knew Bailey was deceased. She identified her late that afternoon. But a local reporter called me. I'd done just a few interviews at that morning. Let me back up. When I got home that morning, I got relieved and got home that morning. Media was already swarming. I had to call John Hanson.
They hunted your house. They were waiting for you at home.
Yeah. And I'll say the local media was always great because it affects them too, because they're our media. The national media, they just wanted their story. They didn't give a crap. So they were knocking on neighbors' doors at 7 a.m,
Oh, boy.
I had to call John Hanson. He used to be our public information guy, one of the greatest guys in the world. Rest in peace, passed away of cancer a couple of years ago. But I had to call him to get his police connection, say, hey, I need these people off my yard, out of my neighborhood, So that's when it all kind of the whirlwind started right then. And it didn't stop for a while. But
well, first,
go ahead.
Truly appreciate you offering that rendition of it. Mm-hmm. And you went from Chris Fields to Chris Fields, right? And you didn't even know it, right?
I didn't even know it. And like I said, that's where Chief Hansen helped me out so much, because we can go back and forth on it. But a lot of my struggles became that irrational guilt, because I felt horrible that, and I find all this out that she couldn't, that I was in this photo with this lady's baby. Now she's getting no privacy, and I'm the last one that held her child, that she knows that she has a connection with. And the being singled out, God, I like to be the center of attention, at the fire station and be the funny guy and all that, but to be singled out in a teamwork thing like that. And that's where John Hanson helped me so much when I was struggling with that. I was going, because Chief Mars would call and say, hey, Chris, so-and-so wants to ask you a few questions, do an interview. If you don't want to do it, just let me know. I'll be the bad guy and tell him no. Well, my little irrational brain's going, well, I don't want to be a bad guy, So I'm doing all these interviews, but this reporter called and asked if I wanted to meet Aaron. And I said, no. I said, I do not. She said, Bailey's mother, do you want to meet her? And I said, I have no idea what I would say to her. No, I don't want to. She goes, well, she contacted me. She wants to meet y'all. I said, oh, well, then let's do it.
Why don't you lead with that first?
Yeah. That changes the whole, in our world, that changes the whole narrative. And so went and met Aaron that very next day, that afternoon. Took a buddy my wife came with me. We took a buddy with me for a little moral support, and me and the police officer, John Avery, met her. And she was thanking us for, at least she knew, she was talking about all the families that didn't know the fate of their loved ones yet. She was just, this 21-year-old single mom who just lost her only child was comforting these, two big, supposed to be badass first responder, because we're just, we're blubbering fools. We don't know what to. She said she could tell we were fathers by the way we handled her baby, and she appreciated that. And you're just going, So, and we've still got a bond today. We still talk, and she's had 2 more children since then, and we still communicate and all that kind of stuff. So, but, yeah. And then I say that was the first day. And then, the next month was just pretty much, recovery.
Yeah, not to stay there, and I just want to add one thing, but it's crazy the power in a photo in all the different ways, right? But just even if you were to Google, Chris Fields, Oklahoma bombing, the second thing that pops up is it's a Today Show link. Oklahoma City firefighter holding baby in iconic photo retires, right? Which I'm sure, as Dan will get to, plays into your story, right? Because hundreds of firemen retire every day on this job, and they retire in their firehouse, and there's maybe a little ceremony, and they go away, and here you are, Today Show news because you're retiring, right? And it just, yeah.
I know when you say, I'm sitting here and you say that, I'm going, that's it's crazy. That's why I always kid with my wife and say, they're going to do a story when I die. You're going to have to answer questions about when firefighter holding the baby, but that John Hanson, when I was struggling with that identity and that being singled out and saying that's not who, he said, let me tell you something, Chris. He said, to me, when I see that, it's not about Chris Fields. It's not about Bailey Allman. He said, you are representing every first responder at that scene that day, no matter what entity, whatever, whoever they work for. And he said, and Bailey represents all the innocence that was lost that day through death, through just the innocence of having your city bombed, and people that today, 30 years later, are still battling physical injuries from that day. So that was when he told me that was like a huge weight off my shoulder. I had to make myself think that, because I was still going, dang, but the support I had from the guys and girls at Oklahoma City Fire Department when I was doing interviews, and they were going, hey man, you're doing great. You're representing us great. There were a lot bigger ding dongs that could have been in that position, and made us look silly or whatever. So the support I had from that was I could never thank them enough. The support I got from the guys and girls of the fire department. So,
well, the enormity of that incident alone, right, changed so many lives. Like, right, we have any line of duty death or suicide or injury on our job, and then you have, like you said, 168 dead, 19 of them being children, and then all your exposures to all the different people. And you say, okay, your one company would shed 37 or 39 houses.
Yeah. They all, everybody in Oklahoma, everybody that was employed with the Oklahoma City Fire Department, did
and
something.
Beyond. Right. Yeah. And beyond. Yeah. Right. And
did something.
And I appreciate the what you just shared in regards to someone trying to explain why you feel like the way you do, but everybody had that similar experience. And then I would imagine, and again, I'm not throwing stuff at you. I could imagine, like, as people are patting you on the back, say, thanks for representing us. And you're probably going to bed at night going, why me? Why? And probably people are saying, well, you're handling it well. It's like, yeah, but why Chris Fields? And I don't want to paint a bad picture on this at all. Because when I got to meet you 6 years ago or 7, and now, to me, you're the same person as the carefree, fun-loving, gregarious, will kid with the next person, make fun and make light of the guy in the, and I'm thinking of that guy in the back just going, do, mowing the lawn, and then realizing you're all gone. Some people might think, well, how can you have that mentality or thought process when Bailey and other children and all the other people died? In order for us to truly make it through life without succumbing to the tragedy, we have to change that perspective. As the individual that shared with you, shared the perspective of why you're going to bed at night or wake up in the morning feeling this heaviness.
Right. And the reason, and like you talk about that fun loving, gregarious, all those descriptions. Thank you, by the way.
And good looking. I forgot to say good looking too.
You left good looking out. I felt that was what everybody expected to keep seeing when I was, going through my struggles. So I was that person for a long time until, and I got to say this real quick. I get my platform, the speaking I get to do is all because of that photo. But when I finally cratered and spiraled out of control and got to my rock bottom, man, it was everything. It was at that time when it happened, I had about 20 something years on the job when I started spiraling out of control, but it was everything. I mean, it was from childhood trauma. It had never been addressed. It was, we lost 3 firefighters in '89. One of them was my mentor. I've lost 4 or 5 brothers in the line of duty, so it's not just the photo. And so that makes me go back to when I was saying, why me? My mom, who's the prayer warrior of the family, she'd say, there's a reason it was you, Christopher Lee. She said, you don't know it now. She said, I don't know you're questioning that. And I used to, when I was at my bottom, me and God had some serious, issues to take up with him, about if there's a reason, then you need to show me why, because I'm getting ready to exit this place. If you don't, show me the why. And, I always think about, a lot of people don't know the interesting, like I say, another backstory was 4 days after the Oklahoma City bombing. There was, I think his name was Robert O'Donnell. He was a Wichita Falls. Remember baby Jessica in the well in Wichita Falls, Texas?
Yep.
The guy, Robert O'Donnell, that had came up out of the well with her, holding her, and his picture was on People magazine. And, I don't know what his issues were and why he spiraled out of control, but he ended up losing his job, had some prescription drug issues. And, but 4 days after the bombing, he went into his ex-fire chief's office and laid that photo of me and Bailey on his chief's desk and said, this guy has no idea how his life's getting ready to change.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow,
drove across his family's farm, wrote a note to his sons and blew his brains out.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. He said, sorry to check out this way, but life sucks. And,
damn.
And of course, that was devastating to hear. Because then I put myself in his shoes and thinking, what am I getting into? And then it's kind of one of those deals too, where if I told you a story, by the time you told it to that person, it would grow or it would change. Well, he had a red ball cap on, holding a baby. So by the time that story got its way back here, it was the firefighter in the red helmet holding the baby killed himself. So there was stories all around that I still to this day, a good friend of mine named Clint Greenwood, retired Oklahoma City Fire, teaches hazmat classes all over the country. Every now and then my phone will buzz and it'll be a FaceTime call from him. I'll go, uh-oh, somebody thinks I'm dead. So he'll be in a class and he'll go, hey, Chris, whatever. And he goes, because somebody will say, when they find out he's from Oklahoma City and he talks about the bombing, they always say, is it true?
Didn't he die?
It's sad that he committed suicide. Clint said, Clint says, I always tell him, Chris Fields loves himself way too much. He's not, he tries to make a little joke.
My kind of guy.
Yeah. But, so he'll get hold of me and or he hasn't in a long time, but he used to. It was pretty frequent.
Yeah.
He'd say, tell these people you're still alive. But it was the Robert O'Donnell from Wichita Falls. And so, that was just another thing that just, put another thought in my head of going, God dang it, look what it did to this guy. And look what, now I don't know what all else he had going on, but still, it was just another backstory that a lot of people think it was just we had some national publication was trying to set up me and Aaron to look like we were having an affair. And so we did an interview with him and they wanted Aaron to give me a kiss on the cheek. And we said, no, that's not who we are. We're friends. And well, at the same time, a photographer was creeping around our house trying to get a picture of my lonely housewife sitting at home by herself so they could run this story that the firefighter from the photos.
Oh, wow.
We found out about, we got wind of it and we're able to put a stop to it. And so, I mean, there's so many other crazy stuff like that that was just, and then knowing what Erin was going through, knowing her when she was trying to bury Bailey and she couldn't do it privately because of the media and they had to get the police to get photographers out of trees. And, and I don't say that to put the media all under one light. It's like everything. 90% are good. It's that 10% that make, like the fire service. Most of us are pretty decent guys and girls. It's that low percent that makes everybody, second guess who we are. So yeah, it's just that there's a lot that went on. So.
Yeah, I think it's a lot, right? A couple things you said just a second ago. And one of them I wrote down before you said it, and it's just how it happens. But, childhood trauma, right? A lot of times you can look back and, people that are in the military and first responders, there's something that often when you go through something tragic and traumatic and near and dear to your heart and you start uncovering it, you uncover things from the past. But something else that I'd written down and then you said it is why. And, I think it's important for people to know, right? Whatever your faith, your higher power, your thing that keeps you going, right? The why can be something that can make us or break us, right? Yeah. And so, I'll just say for me, a lot of trauma and tragedy in the past, I can't ask the why. Why did I see that? Why did I go on that call? Right. Why did I go to combat? Why? Right? It goes back to what you said is, and you mentioned it, is you have to trust, right? Whatever it is, God, your higher power, whatever, you were meant to be there on that day in that position, jump that call, arrive at the time you did, be on the hazmat rig, get the assignment you did, and interact with that guy, that police officer for a reason.
Right.
Right. And sometimes, especially for younger guys that are listening, you have to trust. You have to trust that you were supposed to, there was a reason, and you might not know today, you might not know tomorrow, you may never know, but you have to trust it. And sometimes if you try to figure out the why too much, that can be more harmful than powerful, right?
Oh, no doubt. And like I say, it was just one of the things where there's a reason it was, on that day, because actually I was actually on the rescue ladder that month, but me and the other captain had switched because the ladder was going to go to the grocery store. He was the officer on the hazmat that day and he was cooking. So we had just switched that morning so he could go to the grocery store on the ladder. And there was a reason I wasn't on the hazmat that month.
Right.
And I was thinking, because I've been on the ladder, they spotted on a different part of the building. I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have taken those steps I took. Yeah. And it was just, it was just like say, you can question it all you want. Why? Like I say, and I always tell people, I don't get religious on them. I know what my faith is. And I always tell them, you can't get through life. If you don't believe in something bigger than yourself, man, you are screwed. I mean, if you think you are all there is, you don't think there's something bigger than you out there, whether, like say, whatever like you said, whatever that is to you. I always talk about your family, whatever family is.
Sure.
Everybody's family is different. Your family may just be you and one parent, that may be your family. So yeah, like I say, the why or the why not can take that.
And I'll add to that real fast. And I know Dan's got a couple things, but it's 1000% natural, in my opinion, to want the answers to the why.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part to that is, I would say, just my opinion, don't try to do it alone. Right. And that's a lot of things we talk about, right? This podcast and mental health and things that are just happening in the fire service today. Mm-hmm. But you don't try to walk that path alone when you don't have to. Right. Because it will tear you apart. Right.
Yeah. And what I try to tell people first responders, when I speak is, you aren't alone. I mean, Kenny Mitchell's a retired fireman out in Virginia. He's got a little organization, and their little motto is "There's too many of us to feel alone."
100%.
And I love that, because that's why I try to tell them. I said, I don't get up here to tell you that you're not going to experience trauma. I said, I'm up here to tell you, you're going to experience it in this line of work. It is inherent with the job, but you don't have to. Good Chris Scallon always says it's usually not the trauma, it's how we carry it or how we, but you don't have to end up. My message: you don't have to wait till the wheels fall off, like I did.
Yeah, the big thing is you don't have to stay there, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if you do stay there, it's probably has something to do with not you, but the individual, as opposed to everybody else.
Oh, definitely.
And I think while you're thinking on that, Dan, I think we're really trying. We hear the word normalize and whatever, mental health, right? Whatever, you make it normal, make it not a stigma, break the stigma, whatever your language is, right? But to your point, Chris, is we do nothing alone in this job. We don't go to fires alone. We don't go to EMS calls alone. We don't celebrate birthdays alone. Somebody has a kid, holidays.
You don't even get to. Usually,
and I was going to say, you don't get to go to the washroom yourself because somebody's in there messing with you.
You can't even shower because somebody's popping you or dumping ice water on you. So why is it that we're so comfortable doing everything else together, short of climbing in a bed with the other guy to be funny and nap with them and get it on photo?
Right.
But then we wind up and I always say everybody has different levels of, I call it the world stage call. That might not be right, but everybody has that call, right? Whether it's something that you experience, it's a car wreck, it's a pediatric medical, everybody has a call to that magnitude for them. We have to figure out we got to stop trying to do it alone.
Right. Well, right. And when I talk now, I get on fire chiefs and leaders to say, it's on you. You have to establish that, whatever the word I'm looking for is, culture, that it's okay. It's just like if a guy or girl gets hurt at a fire, breaks a leg, whatever, man, busting their ass, doing their job. We check on their families. We check on them on, the chief's calling, hey man, how you feeling? How's your rehab coming? Yada, yada. Guy or girl gets cancer. What do? Man, we make up food trains to take to their house. So the wife, you need help picking up the kids. We know you got to take your husband or your wife to chemo. We're right there for them. We're almost overly responding to them. We smother them. But then once you hear it's a mental health, he's struggling with it. Oh, yeah, we better, So that's it's more like a hands-off approach. Well, they'll let us know if they need anything. They'll let us know if they, no, it's the same thing. It's an injury that comes with this job that you can rehab from, just like the broken leg, so.
Again, Chris, we definitely appreciate, and for those people that are out there that, haven't heard you talk, while you talk kind of like you did here and share a bit about the events leading up to, not only the bombing itself, but with Bailey and then thereafter, this conversation is less about the spiral. And for everybody that's listening knows that, I've heard Chris speak about that at a point, but I appreciate the fact that this next piece here that we're going to talk about in the next 15 minutes is more from a protective factor upstream. And what do we need to do? What is the department, not just the fire chief, but the candidates from a fabric of the fire department, but things to keep in mind that hopefully people caught as you shared, as you mentioned that you came across two people that were deceased at the body, or your team company came across two that were deceased and then one alive. I look at, for many of us who come across, and we have this every single day, all day, with loss, with death, whether it be a motor vehicle accident, heart attack, shooting, suicide, whatever it may be. It wears on us. And we typically don't know until we act a certain way or somebody tells us, hey, why are you being a jerk?
Or we think we're hiding it, but everybody else sees it. Yeah.
100%. And it's a key thing is that you need those successes, that one person alive or whatever that may be, that CPR success, so we can rejuvenate and not get that negative thinking or that nihilism of like the world is a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You shared also that, and I don't know how long it actually took, and many people that I've worked with clinically over the last 38 years, is it's not always that single event. Now, there are those cases where it's a single traumatic incident, but I would imagine that it took you some time with some people that you significantly trusted, personally and professionally, to understand the dominoes, right? That led to that event. Mm-hmm. Some people will just, and I don't know this for a fact because I haven't talked to anybody, but it could assume that looked at that, no, that tragedy, you know, took Chris Fields down, and you shared in just a short sentence, like there were a lot of things that led up to that event. We do not do a very good job as human beings, let alone first responders, at processing that grief from the losses that we have that usually are very much more personal to us.
Right.
From a protective factor, knowing a little bit about you, you have your humor, your gregariousness, the firehouse bantering, good humor, dark humor, and all the humor in between. And you had a newborn, not a newborn, but 2-year-old son. You had another one that came on the way, and you have, I believe her name is Cheryl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your wife, stuck by your side. From what I remember, right? You've been married 30.
Hope she doesn't watch 30.
Oh, better not get this one wrong.
30, let's see. Married in 1989, 37 years. 30.
Okay, we're going to say over 30 years.
Yeah, 30, yeah.
The over-under, because I knew it was more than 30 because I've been married 30. And,
like 30.
Sorry to put you on this.
33, 34 or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
that does not come by accident. So what I say to people too that might find themselves in any situation that is overwhelming, or you see somebody in overwhelming, what we also ask, not like, oh, poor Chris, or oh, poor Dan, or Chris Muscle, because Chris has his own story, is what are the supportive protective factors that are in place to support that individual, not only like right now, but through this process. And you mentioned the gentleman who died by suicide, and what did you mentioned his name? I forgot his name.
Oh, the firefighter from Wichita Falls, Robert O'Donnell. Yeah,
Robert. What I can't help but think, and many people who have died by suicide, did he have the people around him that like you shared? And I'm gonna I don't know, but that's what I wonder about. Did he have the people? The other thing is then do we take that help, right? So with that said, besides those protective factors I just mentioned, and please boast about your lovely wife, Cheryl, what supported you as you were spiraling to stop that spiraling and to move in the direction you're at today? Well,
I was glad you threw that little caveat in there when you said about all the support we have, all that, and if we're willing to accept it. That's kind of where my downfall was. Anybody that was, it started out, like I said, well, I think I'm hiding it good, because the bombing was in 95, lost those guys earlier, and then there was a few events after the bombing. So it was like 2005 or 6. So you're talking 10 years down the road before, and all that other time, man, I'm just being the Chris Fields everybody expects to see, I want to be that guy, but I was having these little bouts of depression and isolation, which had a trigger that kind of spiraled out of control. And back then, I think it's real important that spouses be involved with any kind of mental health conferences or training, because Cheryl knew there was something different, but she didn't know what to do or what to say. And there are certain things to do and to say and not to say, and, but all these people that were noticing, that were reaching out to me, that's who I was pushing away, and that led to me and her being separated for 17 months. I kind of chuckle when I say that, because I don't want people to think I'm laughing because I was separated for 17 months. But the first time when I spoke at your deal in San Antonio, I think I said we were separated 13 months, and Cheryl was with me. And she was sitting in the back. She was with Sally Spencer Thomas, I think, sitting there. And when I said that, I kind of looked back, and she was going. So I said, what? I actually talked to her while I was about to say, what? She goes, it was 17 months. I was like, okay, you're not coming again. But so we always think of that when I say that, but nothing to laugh about. But that's what led to, 17 months of separation from my wife and my sons that I left at home. By this time, Ryan's 16, maybe 17. I leave him to be the man of the house. I'm out worrying about what Chris Fields wants. And I found me a group that was in the same crappy place I was. So that was my support group. They were telling me everything I was doing was fine, because that's what they were doing. And I supported them, and so I always try to say the best place to get your life advice isn't sitting in a strip bar drinking beer during the afternoon with a bunch of other firefighters are in the same crap you're in. And
right.
We're telling each other what we wanted to hear, and it came to a point for me to where 17 months running all over the city, had an extramarital affair that, shoving in people's faces and humiliating my parents and my family. And it came to a point to where that's what was eating. Now I'm not even thinking about what I think. I'm not thinking about my childhood trauma or the job. Now I'm thinking I've destroyed my family. That's what was eating me up. And that's when I, thought I would take enough Xanax and drink enough alcohol that if I didn't wake up the next morning, that, everybody could kind of reset. And, and I've learned a lot, and I know you're a lot more knowledgeable on this stuff than I am, but talking to these people about the suicide, or when they say they want to end it, it's not about dying and not being, it's about ending the pain, stopping the pain, whether it's mental or physical or whatever. And for me, man, it was just the shame and the mental anguish and all that. And, God willing, I'm still here, and called my wife that morning and said, hey, I want to come home. And she said, come on. And she'll tell you that, there's her friends telling her, kick that dude to the curb. He's a piece of crap. He ain't never going to change. But she'd always tell people, I'm not dealing with Chris Fields. She said, your eyes were like blank. She knew if she could ever, and she'll tell people, it wasn't about saving the marriage that time. It was about saving me so I could be a father, be around to be present for my sons. The marriage working out, being great. It was just end up being a bonus, of the deal. But her main concern was getting me right so we could, and it came through a lot of, finally reaching out for help, going to a facility, diagnosed with, checked all the boxes. And, all my actions, I always tell people I own my crap. I didn't, I was diagnosed with PTSD, depression, isolation, all that, and all that kind of stuff. But I own that contributes. And once you get in that world, you don't think about the repercussion. You don't care anymore, So, I didn't do those things, those crappy things I was doing because of what was going on in my head. It was just, it was all about Chris Fields, period. And, through my counseling and through my EMDR and all that, I always think, because my childhood trauma, being molested when I was 10 years old, I always think, because my therapist, Kathy Thomas, great lady, my hero, we were doing EMDR, and I don't know how they do it or how, but she'll tell me now, she knew that was part of my story. I'd never said it. I'd never told anybody, wife, nobody. But she just, when we were doing EMDR, she would, and well, what's now? And I would, one day I just threw it out there. And I'm telling you, from that day, my, because there was more that irrational guilt, like I felt for the photo, felt the responsibility that for the photo. I felt responsible for what had happened to me, being 10 years old and knowing in my mind thinking you should know better, you should, but when it's somebody that's respected in the community and the church, but I often think I wonder if I would have processed that earlier in life and addressed it earlier in life. If when all this other stuff was happening, I would have handled it better. I mean, it's neither here nor there now, but I always think about that because you think, well, if I would have handled that then and learned how to process it and all that, would I have handled things different in the future, with the bombing and the calls on the job and all that kind of stuff. So it's
but I know when you say that, and I think but people like you do now wonder, can I do it better? And I think that helps us each day now, trying to be better today and tomorrow, right? Because knowing you again is I've from what you've done, trying to continue to serve because you got help, and you mentioned about the therapy, and everybody. This is not a thing about therapy. It's more about protective factors and who you have around you, which you kind of shared, which is important for people that are out there listening. Is that if you personally and the people around that you're talking with don't have protective factors, get them, right? Don't wait for something bad to happen to get them beforehand. But when you mention about therapy, everybody asks about, well, what's the best therapy? I always tell people the one that works for you.
Yeah, exactly. If stand on your head eating a banana works, power to you. And you talk about protective factors. I know I got kind of way off the deal, but I think about, and I see fire departments across the country, and Oklahoma City's getting better at, in rookie school, expose them to what they're going to see. The advertisements to hire you is all hero stuff, lights and sirens and, CPR, and it works. And that's all.
Chris see the world, right? He was,
expose.
He was in a worse bet.
Expose them because eventually that nuance of running up and down the road at 2 a.m, lights and sirens kind of fades away, that, and then it's the reality of the job. And so I think it's important in the rookie school, man, you got to involve the spouses. And I tell, especially guys that are on and girls that are on peer support teams, and if you got a story, share it, man. However you can do that with your fire department, share it.
That's the relatability, because you never know who you're going to touch.
Right. And most of you take a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid that's getting hired, and you see somebody on the peer support team, if they come in to talk to the rookie school or whatever, if I'm 20, I'm thinking, those guys got their crap together. They're leaders. That's why they're on the peer support team. Well, most of them are on the peer support team because they've been through crap, and they want to give back. So that's always tell them, if you got a story to tell it, because that's a good as, protector as there is, because they let them know you're human. Like I say, in rookie school, every emotion they're going to feel, everything they're going to feel on every call is perfectly normal,
Yeah. The worst part about this show is it goes by so fast, and I can't believe an hour went by. I know Chris is going to have something, and I'll have him sign off. But going back to the clinician, what a wonderful thing to hear the respect and the caring that you have for the person that helped you. I always try to tell people too, a couple things. Just like firefighters, we'd like to think that they're all great, but we're not, unfortunately. I mean, we're human beings. Same thing with clinicians. So if you don't find the right one, find another one.
That's right.
And number 2 is that a lot of times, and I think it's important too, cultural awareness, but also for many years that I've been in this field, in the beginning, a lot of people didn't understand or didn't take the time to understand the careers that they might be treating. Now, cultural competence is important. I think that's important. But I heard you talk about somebody that was very good, that used tools to help you navigate the struggles that you had that were deep embedded. Some people talk about medications. Some will talk about just talk therapy. Some will be experiential therapy. You mentioned EMDR. Again, never know for exact which one's going to work for you. But also keep in mind, not just you, I'm talking to the public that out there or the people that are listening, is that just because somebody doesn't know how we eat and sleep at the firehouse doesn't mean that they're not a good clinician too.
Right.
Can I ask, did that person have cultural competency, or were they just a absolutely wonderful, good clinician?
Well, I think she was actually a wonderful, good clinician before she became culturally competent. She changed her focus to strictly first responders, and she responded.
But after you,
But after you,
or before you?
Oh no, before me. Yeah,
okay.
She had already, and then she's based out of Stillwater, Oklahoma, close to here where OSU, FS. Anyway, so she helped with the bombing. I didn't know her then. I didn't go to debrief. I went to debriefings, but I didn't speak, and then, but culture calling, I agree with that. That's a good way to put it, that just because they don't know how we eat and sleep, because in one word, we want to say trauma is trauma, no matter what walk of life you're in. But then we want to say, well, if you don't know how we eat and sleep, then you don't know trauma,
Yeah.
So, I mean, can't have it both ways, I don't guess.
Chris?
Yeah. To Dan's point, I hate how the show goes so fast sometimes. That doesn't mean we can't do more in the future. But a couple of things that I'll close with is, we talk about childhood trauma, and then trauma from, whether it's this call or just a compounding trauma, complex PTSD, right? And then you talk about irrational guilt, and a couple of things I wrote down just listening that stick out to me is one of the many things that probably makes this whole call-in situation very unique is going back to kind of what opened the show was the photo, the vicarious trauma, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're seeing that photo over and over and over throughout the years, right? It's not a call we go on, we finish that run, and it's filed away because we're on the next call, right? So a lot of different things that, for people that are listening, it's not just one thing that will affect us, right? There's a lot of multifactorial, if you will, things. But something that I wrote down, and I even put it in little quotations on my paper that really just stood out big time to me is, when your wife said, I'm not dealing with Chris Fields.
Right.
Man, to have a spouse, a partner, a family member, a friend, a dog's cousin's owner, somebody that knows you so well, to be able to say, I'm not dealing with Chris Fields, i.e. my husband, my brother, my sister. Right. That in itself is powerful, right? Because obviously, 17 months later, you're able to go back home, but oftentimes, right, those people are there day one and they're like, I'm going to get in front of whoever and say things, and they're going to call people and, hey, red flag. And maybe they're not going down the path that you want them to, but they're safe. Right. And things like that. So, everybody's got to have somebody like that in their life.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you got to find them, and you got to build that connection and that bond. Because
most of us do have that person. It's just the fact if we let them in or not. Yeah.
If we let them in, and I would say to, the young guys and gals that are listening is, you're not 10 foot tall and bulletproof like you think you are. Establish that relationship early if it's not a significant other or something. Yeah. So, I know we're low on time, but, thanks for being on the show. What an amazing story, amazing family that you have, it sounds like. So
I do have an amazing family, and I appreciate y'all having me on, keep up with Chief there and all he's doing and everything. So I appreciate y'all having me on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's successful, right?
Yes.
It's a journey. You look at the market was down the other day, yesterday, whatever percent, and it's back up. And
Yeah,
man, how
and,
do we stay in the game?
and like you say, it's a success. I hate to hear somebody go in there and vomit trauma all over everybody for an hour, but then not talk about what they did to.
Yeah.
You say you got to keep moving. You don't. If you're in the middle of hell, you just keep moving. You don't stop. And well, tell us how you did. So like I said, it's a success. I don't even like to think about where I would be or where I wouldn't be. If I hadn't reached out for help.
Yeah.
I got a good friend, Frank Lito. He was the deputy director of the FDNY Counseling Center, and he tells a story when we do trainings and at where there was a loss of life. We've all experienced that: EMS, fire, dispatch, whatever, police, you name it, right? And he said he was cutting the onions, and one of the senior guys came by and saw that it was affecting him. The guy says to him, he says, "Frank, what the hell's going on?" He goes, I wondered if I should do more. What could I have done fast? All the stuff that we have, right? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? Could I have done this? And Frank will say, he goes, the guy in his gruff voice, probably smoking a cigarette in the kitchen way back when, right? Says, "Hey, Frank, did you start that fire?" "No." "Did you do everything you can?" "No." He said, "Then just cut the fucking onions."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that was therapy 20 something years ago. And very seldom do I say that. And I don't like necessarily swearing, but that's exactly what I said.
Sometimes it's necessary. It fits.
Yeah. And so again, people might say, like, I don't know what title we're going to have for this show. And Chris actually asked me, and I think of, when I think of Chris Fields, I think of exactly what you just got. The funny, the ribbing, the gregarious, wants to have fun, family person who is probably, and I mean this in all due respect, on April 18th, 1995, the day before, was just Chris Fields, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens, on April 19th, 1995? So with that said, well, what I offer to people that are listening is that take all the things into account, right? And if you didn't plan for the worst day, there's going to be a deep downward spiral there. So we just did another show with a wonderful lady out of Fairfax County, Virginia, Stephanie White, and talks about training and again, protective factors and the cumulative aspect of it. And Chris and I never want to come across Chris Muscle. I know you're both named Chris. It's amazing I could keep everybody in order here, but with three of us. In the fire service, train. Let's make, and I love what you said in regards to the talking to the fire chiefs, but I also say the firefighters are going to be the fire chiefs in the future too. So we have to talk in academy, which I know you do as well. Right. Thanks for sharing that message. Behavioral health, mental wellness, and protective factors have to be the fabric of the fire service, which we have a lot of good ones. And if you turn around and don't have them, don't just blame the administration, blame yourself for not being a part of it.
Right. Step up. Right. I mean, yep. I agree.
Yeah. So, Chris, thanks a ton for, I know your people don't know, again, the backstory. We're getting done. You're probably going to have something to eat, and then you're going to be babysitting your grandson or daughter.
2.5-year-old grandson.
Man, awesome. Right? And you're probably giddy every time you get to do that.
Right now, until he figures it out, he thinks I'm the best thing around. So I got a few more years. Before he figures it out.
Man, outstanding. Thanks for spending some time with us, Chris. And for all of you out there in fire engineering world, thanks for joining us.
In the firehouse, every second counts. The best tool for the job, a well-rested firefighter. Dreamseat firehouse furniture, built for durability, designed for comfort, because your best tool is your team at their best.